Hello. Can everyone hear me? Thumbs up? Oh, I see. Okay. Before I start, I just want to say I was here about 4 months back at a retail technology show, and I wasn't sure how can I speak or how can I listen to anyone. Today I learned that this is how you'll be able to talk to me or you'll be able to understand that. So that was new to me, but finally I will be able to figure it out. So welcome to this talk. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how GenAI will and will not change data teams. The background or the reason or my motivation behind how I basically came around and saw that maybe this is something that I want to talk about is over the last 1 year or so, we have been, basically everyone's been talking about GenAI or something. I'm one more guy who speaks about it now. And I saw people started talking about how it can revolutionize content creation, marketing, advertisements, and then all the way someone said like, oh, we have Devin AI, which basically can write software for you, write codes and stuff. So there's Copilot and so on and so forth. And I was like, wait, hang on a minute, we kind of missed one step here. What about the data teams, right? What happened to how GenAI gets used into the data side of things? And I started reading a little bit about it, and all of a sudden there were these good articles, but some very bad articles professing some sort of doomsday kind of thing that data teams will get replaced, will get eaten up by AI or something. And I was like, well, maybe, maybe not. And that was my idea behind why I thought it's worth talking about this, right? So I must say that a lot of this field is still evolving. If you are not sure, just look around you. Every single stand has a word AI in it. So it's all, everyone's trying to figure this out. But as a data team, if you are an organization lead, if you're leading a data team, or if you're thinking how AI can be used, of course, talk to all of them. They have so many different suggestions. But as someone who has worked in this field for some time, I want to give you an overview of where I think you can benefit from GenAI or how they will change your data teams going forward. So when I speak about these in the past, what I said in the beginning is by the end of the presentation, if you have more questions than the answers that you have now, I have done my job very well, because that's what I want you to get out of it. I want you to kind of think about it and see where exactly we are heading and how you can utilize these things that I'm talking about in your day-to-day operations. That was a very lengthy introduction. Let's keep moving on. We have a clicker, so I can move to the next slides. A little bit about myself. My name is Gaurav Tiwari. I currently work as an engineering manager at Spotify, based here in London for the last 3 years. A bit of a background about myself. In addition to my work at Spotify, I run my own consulting company, a one-person thing which basically focuses on providing small, medium businesses around data consulting, data architectures, and so on and so forth, guidance around this. So if you're someone who are looking for something like that, please get in touch with me. I'd be more than happy to have a chat. Before joining Spotify, I worked at Facebook, now Meta, for about 3 years, leading the data and analytics and data science team. So a lot of that work was very much heavily focused on ML models, which is now very easily rebranded into AI, right? So I focused on a lot of things where, imagine if you were posting or seeing a Gucci bag for $10 on Marketplace, that was taken off before you saw it. So those are the kind of problems that I was trying to solve there at Facebook. I worked and was fortunate enough to move around different countries and basically worked at Home24, which is an online shopping company in Germany. I worked in Singapore for some time, Malaysia, and I'm originally from India. In terms of the agenda today, I want to talk about 3 things. I know I have 30 minutes. I don't want to take too much of your time. If you finish it early, that's even better. You can grab a coffee. 3 very specific things that I want to talk about. The GenAI possibilities. I want to call it possibilities for being nice. I wanted to write promises, because when the GenAI topic came in, there was a lot of promise that this is going to happen, that is going to happen, and then we're slowly starting to see what are the limitations. So we'll get into those kind of things. And then it might sound a bit negative, like, oh, everything is lost. It's not. How do we find a balance for you as a data organization lead or a person in the data team who's trying to find out how do you find a symbiosis between GenAI and your data work and build a strategy around it? We'll cover some of the topics there as well. Yep. Let's talk about possibilities and promises, as I said. So as I started, when GenAI came in, there was a lot of possibility and promises that were offered, like for example, code. We have almost magical code generation. You go to ChatGPT, Cloud or something, write a Python program, write a SQL program. Almost immediately you have the entire thing written out for you, right? That's pretty amazing if you think of it. You have Gemini, who has basically integrated into Google BigQuery. That solves a lot of your problems as well, right? It's very good code for you. So it was almost magical, right? And you can do pipeline creations, code templating, and deployment, and so on and so forth. So imagine if you were the lead of a data team and you had your data analysts or data engineers who can benefit from spending less time writing code and basically doing more stuff. That would be pretty amazing, right? Similarly, think about your stakeholders or your business owners. Imagine if they could have answers using the almighty natural language chat, where you can basically, you as a stakeholder, can ask a lot of questions in natural language and basically do not require a data analyst or a data person to be constantly available to them to answer those questions. Solves a lot of problems. And basically you are bringing your stakeholders one step closer towards understanding and knowing more. I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but there's a lot of noise at the background. I hope it's fine, yeah. And the final thing is scaled efficiency. Over the time with the release of new models, I'm going to quote GPT-4o or something like that a couple of times, but it applies to a lot of different LLMs out there. The ingestion of data is increasing at a rapid rate. You can now simply drop a CSV or a PDF file and it can do all the analysis for you, right? So what this has done is, as a data team member, it has opened up possibilities for you to read and basically ingest data in so many different formats that was such a big pain to basically do in the beforehand, right? So when we talk about possibilities and things that you see on a daily basis that are the offerings, and you see someone dropping a file into ChatGPT and basically analyzing that or so on and so forth, there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of things that would immediately speak out to you that why not we do this in our day-to-day basis, right? But there is a lot of caveats associated with this, which is where I basically jump into what are the limitations. A lot of these things are really good in theory. Like, they all sound really perfect. Like, imagine someone can basically write a 100-line query, SQL query for you, and you basically just have to copy paste it and run it. More importantly, if you can write a code that basically deploys that query for you and runs it on a daily basis, right? And it can cater for itself, customize itself and based on the needs of the business. That's a pretty good place to be in. But we have seen that there is a lot of limitations around it as well. So before I go into that, this was a research that came out in the 2024 AI Index report that says the performance of AI across the board has surpassed human capabilities across a range of tasks. So if you look at the x-axis at 100%, that's a human baseline. And you will see quite a lot of different models out there. And you can see over time, their capabilities are essentially coming close to the baseline of what we expect a human to do, right? Publicly available information, nothing that I'm coming out of myself. Yet, they also said that these models still trail behind on more complex tasks, right? What are the complex tasks? Competition-level mathematics, visual common sense, reasoning and planning. So, imagine you're a data team member, right? Aren't these the kind of tasks that you want to automate or basically solve for yourself? Because if you want to have just a simple calculation for your stakeholders, it's available to everyone. Every tool out of the box provides you some basic analytics, and you don't really need to go deeper into it. So using AI is good, but it's still not going to solve the problems that I'm talking about here. And I'm guessing those are the kind of problems that you want to take advantage of for AI to be able to solve, right? To get you or your data team, reduce the burden on your data teams, or get the stakeholders one step closer to the problems that they're trying to solve. Imagine you were a stakeholder and you were thinking, like, maybe if I could just dice this data or slice this data by one more thing, but I'm not technical enough to do it. Or if you are a person who doesn't know how to write a code, or you're really new to writing code, or you could just basically leverage AI to basically solve a problem that is slightly more complicated than the confidence level that you have. That's the kind of things that we're trying to solve here, right? But in the current stage, this is the limitations where Despite AI models being very good or getting very close to human baseline and maybe surpassing them, they're still far away from doing tasks, which is the reason why we want AI or models to be implemented in our data teams, right? Anyone can create a dashboard of saying like, what is our daily traffic like? What is our revenue? Just stating a few things. But imagine you want to dive granular into it. You want to dive more complicated questions. That's where AI is still not there yet. So that's a limitation. Now compare that with the possibilities of the promises that we were talking about before. There is a gap here, and it's not going to be solved right now. So why do I think, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. Why do I think that there are limitations? So first of all, Gen AI is limited. There is a school of thought around generative AI being general AI, which is the overarching theme of everything is omniscient and so on and so forth. Gen AI is not there. Generative AI, by its very means, is generating something based on the information that it has read over time. I read somewhere, which was a very catchy line, which said, shit in, disaster out. So it's very much like that. If you are providing information that is not at the past, if the model hasn't been trained on something that is good, it's not going to provide you the answers. Secondly, if you are amazed by the magical skills at which it writes code for you, it has read from the past work that you have done. It's not creating something magically by itself. It's basically just regurgitating information that you have done in the past. Secondly, business knowledge. Now, this is something that is limited with AI because every organization has its own set of knowledge or business context around it. So let's take an example. How many of you have ever been to a library or has a library card? You show of hand? Yeah? How many of you can perform an open heart surgery? No? I mean, if you go to a medical section in the library, you will be able to find books on how to do open heart surgery, right? At the same time, you will be able to read through it. I can direct you, like, let's go together to the medical section, and there is this book which tells you everything about open heart surgery, right? But that doesn't mean that you can perform that process, right? Secondly, the knowledge source is still fragmented because you might need more than one book to know everything about open heart surgery. What if you are performing a surgery on someone who has pre-medical conditions? That information lies somewhere else as well, right? So that's where AI is limited, or you'll be limited because you need the business knowledge in order to be able to basically make a call and say, like, let's just throw an AI at it and basically solve the problems. That's the limitation, and we haven't solved that yet. Just go looking back to the previous slide, right? We haven't solved that yet. So the third limitation is business context. Everything that we do around why data teams exist in the first place is because you bring with yourself context around how that business works. If you see a revenue number and you say like, that doesn't look right to me because it seems a bit off, that's the business context that we are talking about. A model wouldn't know that unless you have proper quality and training methods to understand whether data quality is right or not. But there are things that you can, the context that you know about how performance would be that a model wouldn't know in the beginning. Of course, you can work through it, you can improve it over time, but it's not going to happen out of the box. Hence, the limitation around it. And finally, despite everything that we talked about, there is still a reliance of AI or LLM models on data teams. Gen AI fundamentally relies on data teams because you need a pipeline, you need an infrastructure in place to be able to, for these models to run, for these models to ingest the daily information that you're getting, ingest the regular information that you will be providing to them. That cannot happen without a data team, right? So going back to the first slide where I was saying that I read some articles around, like some doomsday-ish kind of article that you don't need a data team going forward in about a year or two, or data engineering is not going to exist anymore because models can basically write pipelines, deploy things for yourself right away from the get-go. I don't know. I don't think about that yet, right? So, because you need some people, you need a human element. Because remember, imagine you have automated everything, and one day something breaks. Who's going to come in and basically solve the problem, right? So you still need the data folks to be able to kind of make that deployment. So Gen AI is amazing. There is a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of things that you can do about it, but there are still massive limitations around it, right? So with that, I'm going to move into the final step around the strategy side of things. So now that we have talked about the promises, and then there are the limitations. Clearly, there is a bit of a gap here. So if you are an organization leader and thinking, or you're a data person or a data enthusiast thinking about, okay, what should be my strategy going forward? How do I make sure that I use Gen AI, but at the same time use it properly, use it nicely, right? In a way that it works for me rather than in a way that I'm struggling the whole time utilizing it. Struggling with the code that I get, struggling with the answers that I get, struggling with the integrations that I get, struggling with the pipelines that I'm creating. How do I make sure that I create a strategy around it? That's where it gets a bit fuzzy. But at the same time, what I think, there should be a different way in which we call AI for data teams. I call it assistive intelligence, because you cannot rely and simply say that particular model is going to solve everything for you. You need to think about using generative AI in an assistive manner in order to leverage those functionalities or those features for your data team on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, what that means, right? So, play assistive intelligence and artificial intelligence. For example, assist with data integrations as a data engineer. Whenever you have to write a new integration, you write a lot of boilerplate code in order to be able to get to the point where you can start integrating with the APIs or interacting with the APIs and basically bringing that information. That remains pretty much standard. That doesn't change. So how can you leverage an AI to essentially assist you with writing those integrations, which are very new and you don't really know how to get to that. Third, automate QA and testing. This is one of the things that a lot of people really are passionate about, but at the same time, it's very, very hard to do that, right? So how can you create or make sure you have the right QA and the right testing in place for data pipelines? That's very important. I work in software engineering right now, and whenever we have to make a PR or make a merge or pull request, there's a lot of different CI/CD builds that go through before they tell you on GitHub or whatever platform that you use that this is ready to merge or something, right? Those are the kind of things that can be leveraged to a data pipeline as well. Those are the kind of things that can be leveraged to your dashboards as well. Those are the kind of things that you can do on a day-to-day basis to build better analysis. And this is where you can leverage AI to basically work as an assistant for you, not just driving the seat. You will be on the driving seat rather than them. And finally, perform basic ETL operation and process. So you can use AI to basically do all of this kind of stuff so that you as a data team member can do more interesting stuff. Yeah. So I added the word interesting, and I was thinking maybe someone might think about like, so what is this interesting stuff that you talk about, right? Because a lot of times people just leave it out there, like, yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff, curious things that you can do, and so on and so forth. And I thought someone might ask this question, so I thought I would create a slide out of it already. And in reality, what it is, I don't fully know. And that's the reason why I simply went out and said, like, if you have more questions at the end of this presentation, I've basically done my job properly. But when I say I don't fully know, I didn't want to just leave it at that. I wanted to give you a hint to kind of get you start thinking about this. So what are the kind of interesting stuff that you can work on? So think about what I know from interesting stuff, things that you don't like doing. Automate your routine task better, right? How can you do that? Think about how you can leverage an AI for doing that. Get closer to the business. No business problem gets solved without the data team. And no data team can be successful without understanding the business in the first place. Every field that you work with, every data team, there is a reason why it exists. Had a business problem been so easy to solve, there would not be a data team in the first place. So there must be a reason why that team exists. And in order to add business value or improve the business or take your business to the next level, you need to get closer to the business. And a lot of data teams struggle with finding the time to do that. If you are spending so much of your time writing, I didn't create a slide, but roughly 60% of the time in a study that came out, that data teams are spending time in generating ad hoc requests, trying to figure out a dashboard that only 3 people will look at, and never thinking about solving an actual business problem because they just don't have the time to do that. So how can you leverage these what are the kind of things that you can do if you have more time to do that? Measure and communicate your team's ROI, return on investment, and finally prioritize your data quality, something that gets almost ignored everywhere. I told you earlier in the beginning that I work as a consultant, and I work at a lot of companies where I've seen a lot of different implementations where data quality almost always takes the backseat because no one has the time for it. You have a workflow that runs, that's the first step already. You're 99% there. Everyone moves on to the next part of things, right? And then if there are data quality issues that arise afterwards, we then go back a step and start looking at it rather than looking at it from the get-go, right? So this is where I feel like a lot of teams needs to think about from a maturity point of view, or if you're a data lead, you need to think about how you manage your organization's data quality. So these are the kind of things that I know of from my experience when I talk about the interesting stuff. But I don't want to leave you here at that and say like, okay, that's basically it. But let's talk a little bit more about what are some good use cases where you can, as a data person, utilize GenAI to build a strategy around it, okay? From a data engineering perspective, the list is quite exhaustive. I've added a link to the post where I got this information from, really nice article if you're interested in. Synthetic data generation, there's quite a few players here which basically help with synthetic data generation. If you're not aware of that, it is basically an AI-based system that helps you test your pipeline when you don't have any data, for example, or you want to run your dashboards when you don't have any data, but you want to get an idea about what that data would look like. How do you do load testing of your pipelines? Those are the kind of things where you can use generative AI and data engineering to essentially stress test your workflows, understand anomalies, see if all the things are working fine, if there are data quality issues, even before you deploy your models to production, right? Or deploy your pipelines to production. I already spoke about boilerplate code generation. My favorite is data documentation. How many of you actually like documentation data? I see a few nods here, like maybe someone really likes it. I honestly can't stand it. Like, it's very hard for me to basically write something only to know in 3 days it will be outdated already because someone just came up with a new logic, right? How do you make sure that you can eliminate that? How do you use GenAI who can easily comprehend code and write a documentation for you? That's one thing to look into. That's some good use case for you to kind of focus a little bit more on. And I think a lot of you are aware of analytics engineering now. Everyone has dbt or similar tools like that. You have documentation, README files, so on and so forth. That's a very good use case to think about. If you are doing proper dbt workflow setups or something like that, you want to make sure your YAML file is quite properly updated and has the right documentation. If you're not doing that, that's a separate topic altogether. But if you want to do that, this is a good place to kind of look into. Going a bit on the data science or analytics side of things, data quality enhancement. Very few people, as I said, like from my understanding, if you are someone who really focuses on data quality, all power to you, because very few people do that. How do you make sure you create the test cases? How do you make sure you generate automated test cases of things that you haven't thought of using GenAI, because it's basically scanning your information for anomalies and so on and so forth. How do you spend time with GenAI to essentially do your enhancement of data quality is a very good use case to solve. There are quite a few players. Once again, when I move around, this place is stacked with people who are offering those products already to you. So if you are thinking of your strategy from a GenAI perspective and data, they have a lot of offering here already to look into. I also mentioned maybe one about data exploration and visualization. It is a topic that for a data analyst takes the most amount of time. You have a request that comes in, someone asks, well, can I get this information? You spend 2 days working on it, they look at it once and they're like, yeah, okay, good. 2 days, gone, that's it, right? So that's not a good thing to do. Like, that's a lot of wastage of your time. And I'm not kidding when I say this, roughly 60% of the analysts do this. It's from a study, I can quote this to you afterwards as well. How do you build your strategy around this? How do you cut those time? Going back, how do you do more interesting stuff rather than just building the dashboards and existing stuff that you already know? That's the problem. That's the strategy, that problem that you should build a strategy for. Because if you are an organization that is already thinking about how can I make GenAI work for me? How can I leverage the importance of GenAI to kind of be in my organization and so on and so forth, thinking about just a product that will just plug and play and basically solve all the answers is not going to happen, at least in the near term. We need to find a way where we can simply assist our data people or data folks to basically do things faster, do things more reliably, do things more robustly. And those are the kind of things that I think you can currently use GenAI for, and not think about that as a solution for solving all of your data problems. I'm sure there is some other conversations or talks that have happened where someone has talked about semantic layering or data information, data background, or history about that, read into those. Those are the kind of things based on which you would probably know a little bit more or learn a little bit more about how your strategy can be built around. So to sum it all up, if you think that you want to use Gen AI or in your team or in your organization, or you're a leader thinking about how can I bring in those kind of things, those features, it's not a simple plug and play, as I said before. There's a lot of good use cases that a data team can leverage on, and some of them are here, not comprehensive enough. There's definitely new use cases coming on a daily basis, new platforms coming in, new products coming in. Use them as a way to assist your team on a day-to-day basis. Because at the end of the day, your importance is not being able to just create a pipeline or write a SQL code. You are there to do far bigger things than just writing those things. So at the bottom line, what I say is we only stand to benefit from generative AI because it helps us increase our efficiency. It reduces the amount of manual work that we are doing. It reduces monotonous work. I wrote this specifically because I knew some people would understand documentation and how monotonous it can get from time to time. There are more chances to drive business value because if you reduce the time that you spend on a day-to-day basis doing the monotonous work, you get to spend time with your stakeholders. You get to spend time to understand what is the problem that they are trying to solve and why they are stuck at certain things that they never thought that you would be able to answer. But now with the time you have, you would be able to do that. Increase focus on code and data quality and better ROI on investments. So those are the things that I think as a Gen AI, as a data team, building your strategy around Gen AI, these are the key points that you would think about, or you should think about how you would leverage and basically go from here. At the very end, if I'm talking about generative AI, nothing is complete without creating an image in Midjourney with generative AI. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.